Welcome to Move Like This, brought to you by the Accounting Move Project and sponsored by Moss Adams, the Center for Accounting Transformation, and CPA Trendlines. On this podcast, we share ideas and hear from guests about how they find, retain, develop, and advance women and other underrepresented groups in their accounting firms. Now, on to our guest. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Move Like This. I am excited today to be talking to someone I have known for quite a while, Jennifer Harrity. She is the Director of Sustainability at Sensiba. And I always have wonderful conversations with her and decided to bring the audience along for this one. So Jennifer, tell us a little bit about your background and what it is that you currently do at Sensiba.
Thank you, Bonnie, for having me here. Yes, I love the conversation we're about to have. So anybody who knows me knows that I love having this type of conversation. So I started at Sensiba about 13 years ago as the head of marketing. So I am a traditional kind of marketer by trade. I have 25 years in marketing and was the head of marketing there for about 10 years until I had the opportunity to take us through something called B Corp certification. Fell in love with B Corp, fell in love with the concept of ESG frameworks and leveraging them to really look at a business and how it operates, both environmentally and socially, and how it compares to the financial data. And went to my managing partner, and John Sensiba, and said, "Hey, I want to start a practice. I want to help our clients get through this." And he loved the idea and said, "Okay, Jennifer, go build a practice." And that's how our ESG sustainability practice started at Sensiba back in 2018, 2019. And since then, we've grown. We have a department of 10 people now. I am one of the directors in the department. And we do everything from dual materiality assessments, emissions, GHG, greenhouse gas inventories and footprinting, to strategic, how to reduce and climate actions and assurance over the GHG numbers. We do impact reports, B Corp certification, EcoVadis certification, fractional CSO, Chief Sustainability Officer type work. So basically a holistic view of all the things in a business that you could basically attack in regards to the E, the S, and the G, which is environmental, social, and governance. So that's what I do now. I transitioned full-time into sustainability in 2022 and never looked back.
Well, I can hear the passion in your voice there. But so let's step back just a little bit and tell me what B Corp certification is and how it ties to your firm or other firms' broader ESG and culture building goals.
Yeah. So B Corp or B Corporation is a third party certification, kind of like USDA is to milk, fair trade to coffee, certified organic. We see a lot of these kind of third party certifications on a product, but B Corp is a third party certification for an entire organization. And it looks at how a company operates in regards to its social and environmental performance, and really requires high level of transparency and accountability. So it looks at things like in the governance, how do you run your business, right? Are you shareholder driven or stakeholder driven, right? Stakeholder meaning, do you take all stakeholders into account when making business decisions, like employees, clients, the environment, your community, right? What are you looking at when you're making your business decisions? And does that help, navigate your decisions? Things like having appropriate policies, like supplier code of conduct or whistleblower policies or things like that. For employees, it's what type of benefits are you giving them? Are you paying them a living wage, right? Not just a minimum wage, a living wage, a little difference there. For community, what types of volunteering are you doing? How many organizations do you reach out to? Are you helping members in the community that make less than $2 a day? Community also refers to supply chain. So, are you doing, communicating with your supply chain for human rights issues, right? What are you working with in your supply chain? And are you starting conversations where greenhouse gases or, lots of different supply chain issues, actually. And then there's the environment. Are you good stewards with the resources you're using from the environment? Like, the greenhouse gases, your waste, your water. That doesn't necessarily always super material for, accounting firms, professional service firms, because have a fairly small footprint in those regards. But for manufacturing clients, construction clients, right, it really does play up in that realm. So looking at all those different things, and for accounting firms specifically, B Corp certification, because it is getting to be better, more and more well known. It's a global certification, so it's all over the world. And a lot of people, particularly in 2020, kind of really blew up in 2020 when we were all in the pandemic and people were looking at stuff that they were using in their homes every day, going, why am I using these things with all these chemicals or all of, I want to put my money where my values are, and making those types of shifts. And so B Corp really got to be more household recognized. And so people would pick up their carton of Silk almond milk and see the B Corp logo right on the front, or their Tillamook cheese, right? Or other brands, or Patagonia, Ben and Jerry's, Tom's, toothpaste and the shoes. So lots of different brands out there that people kind of know and love and have started gravitating towards, particularly the younger generations, right? People 30 and younger are really leaning into, even over 30, everybody wants clean air. Everybody wants clean water. So like just doing the stuff that helps keep clean air, clean water, right? So how this really, impacted our firm. So we went through B Corp certification in 2018. And we knew there were going to be some benefits, like it would be a nice differentiator for us in the industry, being the first B Corp accounting firm in California. And when we certified, we were one of 5 B Corp accounting firms in the US, one of 15 in the world. So it was still kind of a new certification. So it was a nice differentiator for us. And, it got us into a community of like-minded businesses, right? So it was easy to work with folks in the B Corp world because they had the same values. They had the same kind of work ethic. They pay their bills on time, right? Like there's an overall understanding. What we didn't really realize was the hiring and retaining talent benefit. We knew it was going to, our employees were excited about it. It really boosted morale in our organization. But what we didn't expect was when we put the B Corp logo on our recruiting booth, and went to the colleges. And, anyone who's ever been to campus recruiting for an accounting firm, they throw 40, 50 accounting firms in a cafeteria. And then they open the doors, all the students file in, and immediately, normally, all go to the Big Four. And the rest of us have to sit twiddling our thumbs, waiting for them to, 20 minutes later, stumble into our booth. When we had that B Corp logo on our backdrop, students were coming in dead stop when they came in, saying, wait a minute, there's a B Corp accounting firm? Because they're learning about what this is in school. They're learning about conscious capitalism. And they knew what that was. And suddenly we were just as busy as the Big Four booths. And our other accounting firms on the same aisle were like, okay, what is this B Corp thing? Like, what secret sauce is this? And so, we recognized that the certification and the work that goes into the certification is bigger than one firm. So we actually set forth and said, okay, we're going to help other firms become certified. And we've helped Armanino, BPM. We have other firms, here locally that are basically our competition. But we said, this is bigger than one firm. This work and the knowledge that comes with doing this, becoming a B Corp, is bigger than one firm. And so we really stepped up and tried to help other firms become certified. And since then, I've helped many other firms certify. because it is just such a powerful differentiator when you're trying to hire and retain talent. And a lot of firms really talk about walking the talk. And a lot of firms, and I got to say, I think accounting industry in general does an amazing job. A lot of the same values that come with being a B Corp are
Mhm.
automatically already built into our industry. We really do think about our employees and the decisions that we make and how it's going to affect the employees and how it's going to affect the clients. Like we really do look at that. It really does matter because we're such a genuine group of folks. Um, so this is it's not easy, but it's a little easier for I think accounting firms to get through this and to get some of the concepts that come with the B Corp movement of purpose driven, impact driven business.
I love so much about that. And I'm actually impressed that the students that were coming to the recruiting fair were familiar with B Corp because there's so many of us grown-ups that weren't certainly a few years ago. And the fact that you saw it as a differentiator and you were very right about that, as indicated by those recruiting fairs. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and while I know there's a lot of firms that still struggle with hiring and retaining talent, I we don't. I mean, I hate to jinx it. Sorry, recruiting team, but like we've had a steady stream of really high talented, individuals. And we actually have, seasoned folks coming over because they want to work at a firm that has these values and particularly right now, don't back down from them.
Yeah. Well, and also you're going to attract the kind of clients that value that,
Yes.
which just makes you culturally aligned, you know?
Yeah. And not just clients, but business referral partners, right? So you know that the clients that these business referral partners are referring to you are of the same values and mindset. You're going to get the values and mindset piece across from like business partners to clients to employees, like it just holds. And you draw that in, and a lot of people are like, well, wait a minute, if you're doing this and you're publishing it and you're talking about it, isn't that going to alienate some of your clients? And our managing partner said it pretty well. And he goes, well, we don't want to work with those type of clients. If they take offense to us doing the right thing in return, like in terms of like treating people right and treating the planet right, then maybe they shouldn't be our client.
Mhm.
And just having that attitude of just like abundance, like it was an amazing thing. So and we've grown since 2018, we've grown dramatically. So yeah. And I like to think B Corp is kind of a part of that. There's many factors that were a part of our growth, but I think that definitely was a helper in that.
I would expect that it is, because you are putting it out there what you value. And I love the comment about the, you know, clean water and clean air. Yes, we all want that, but more importantly, we can't live without that. So it is something that we should all kind of be thinking about. And I also really appreciate the fact that your managing partner was willing to potentially lose clients, but in the long run, it's going to bring in a lot more clients that are more culturally aligned with where you are and appreciate what it is that you do. So it's in a risk averse profession, that's not something that you see all the time, but every time I do see it, it pays off.
Yeah, you're playing the long game, and it's helped in our M&A strategy as well. We recently, I think was it yesterday, day before, announced that we are merging with Assurance Lab, which is a B Corp out of Australia.
Mm.
So Sensiba is now a global presence because they have offices in Australia and Dublin, Ireland. So it's that growth and just knowing that those acquisitions those other companies come from that B Corp background, makes the due diligence go a little bit smoother. Um, Conversations are a little easier because we're coming from the same base values.
Yes, I can imagine. And, I mean, if you have to go travel to Australia or
I
Ireland,
know, I know. I'll take one for the team. Yeah.
yeah. Well, we've talked about what it is, but we have talked previously that the certification process is not easy. I mean, obviously, there's a whole lot of elements that are getting measured here. So, um, what did you find are some of the biggest hurdles, and how did your team work through them?
Yeah, so it is not a low bar to jump over for sure. And B Corp actually, or the B Lab, the basically the organization that runs the full B Corp certification, sets the standards and certifies companies. They released brand new standards that completely changed the game literally 2 weeks ago.
Oh, wow.
So up until, recently, B Corp certification was, an assessment of about 250, roughly 250 to 300 questions in 5 different areas. You had, governance, customers, workers, community, and environment. And you had a point score, and there's 200, about 200 points possible. And you needed at least 80 in order to submit for the audit with B Lab. Um, and, reaching that 80 was incredibly difficult. 1 out of 3 companies that attempted certification succeeded. So it was exceeding. People go, 80 out of 200, that should be easy. No, it's not. Because a lot of people, when they come in, they go, oh, we do all the great things. Our employees, we have great benefits. We volunteer in the community. And then they look at all of the questions that basically have you look at the E, the S, and the G in all the different areas of your company. And people go, wow, there really is a lot to this. And it makes you step back and look at things that you haven't thought about since you probably founded the company. um and yeah, so it's really a really good look, and it helps you, just like any other ESG framework, right? Like there's B Corp, there's EcoVadis, there's GRI, there's SASB, right? There's lots of different frameworks out there.
Mhm.
This helps you look at your ESG risk and opportunity. And as folks are starting to realize, ESG risk is actually financial risk.
Mhm.
And so really helping to look at where are the holes in our organization, right? And I always recommend people put your company through a couple different frameworks. Each framework has a little bit different leaning to it. So you get to learn a little bit more each framework that you run through. We've put ourselves through several, in our organization, and we learn something every time we go through a new framework. So it's highly valuable for us. Um, but you know, it's shifted. So B Corp certification has raised the bar. They recognized kind of back in early 2020, that multinationals, historically, B Corp certification has been small to medium sized companies,
Okay.
but now multinationals want in on it. And so those multinationals are coming in, and because you only needed 80 points, you can kind of lean into one section and not lean into other areas if you could get more points out of one section. Some companies got through the process that and folks were kind of mad about it, saying, well, wait a minute, how come they're a B Corp? They have this issues. My stance on it is we don't need companies, we don't need a small number of companies doing 100% of the things all correct all the time. We need everybody to be doing it imperfectly if we're going to make any change,
Yeah.
right? Like we need everyone to just do something if we're gonna make change. And sometimes the standards in some areas go, well, no, it has to be 100% correct all the time. And it's like like let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater is my approach. And so, while these other companies, maybe they came in and this was just, they wanted to benchmark themselves and say, okay, this area, we need to work on it. We recognize this area, we need to work on it. Like, but let them be a part of the general movement if that's what they want to do and they want to learn from other companies. Yes, come in, learn, grow. I'm here for that. Um, that's just kind of my motto. Um, but yeah, so in December of 2020, B Lab came out and said, okay, we're going to redo the standards. It's time. We need to up our game. And so for the last 4 or 5 years, they've been redoing the standards. They tweak it, put it out a draft for all of us to tear apart and comment on, take it back, do it again. And so we've gone through a couple drafts and a couple commenting periods, and they released the finalized standards on April 8th. Of this year. And they've moved the standards to harmonize. And this is kind of what's happening in the ESG world right now is a lot of the standards are starting to harmonize together, recognizing that folks are doing multiple, frameworks, and are being required to by a lot of their clients, right? To do multiple, like, hey, we take CDP. If you want to work with us, you got to do a CDP assessment. Hey, we're EcoVadis. If you want to use us, we got to go through EcoVadis. So a lot of people are having to do several different frameworks, just to work with different, clients. And sometimes the interoperability between them was a little messy. And so a lot of frameworks are starting to come together, and harmonize. And B Lab specifically went out and looked at GRI, the Global Reporting Initiative, and which is like an OG framework,
Okay.
and said, okay, how can we lift up our standards to really work better with GRI, which lifts the standards up to a more global standard. So some of the things that you'll see in the new standards are very CSRD Europe's, flavor. It's, we have a whole new section that's human rights. So companies are going to have to look at what are their salient human rights issues in their organization, right, for their industry. They took the environment section and broke it out into two pieces. We've got one that's climate action and another one that is environmental stewardship and circularity. So, and instead of point system, they completely, dropped all the points. And now you're going to have to meet a certain level in each of the 8 new themes that they have. So they went to 5 areas to 8 areas. So you have to have, foundational requirements. You have to meet all of the foundational requirements. In climate action, you have to at least measure your carbon footprint or have a climate action plan. So the bar has definitely been raised across the board for B Corps. So but I think it's a good thing. It's a growth, so it's gonna hurt a little bit. Growing time always kind of a little uncomfortable, but I think overall it's going to make the organizations that stick with certification be a lot stronger, and it's going to add more value to what being a certified B Corp really means.
Wow. And I would imagine there may have been some that qualified under the original framework that might no longer qualify, but it gives companies a
Yes.
tool to reach toward.
Right, right. And we've seen a lot of companies come out and say, well, we're not going to recertify because we, question the integrity of the certification. It's like, what? Due to some things that have changed in your organization, and the change in the standards, you probably can't recertify. So, if it's one of those, there's a lot of blood on the battlefield right now in the corp world. Some of the questions that we're getting is like, well, how many companies are going to recertify? Is there going to be any attrition? And I tell people, as macabre as it sounds, it's like we're in the middle of the battle. We can't count the dead at the moment, right? Like, because recertification is once every 3 years. So it's not a one and done certification, right? You have to recertify every 3 years. And there's a lot of companies that their recertification isn't going to be due in another 3 years. So we're not going to know for probably a couple of years how this is going to impact the B Corp community. There will be some attrition. Some of the new standards are going to be really tough for micro businesses and small businesses to adhere to and to even just pull data for. So it's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but if companies do put forth the effort, it's going to make them stronger organizations.
Yeah.
And it really does help draw correlation between doing the work and financial stability.
Hmm, I gotcha. Um, and I hate to hear that it might impact really small businesses because that seems to have been the bread and butter originally, but
Yeah.
it is hard to create a standard that fits, an enormous corporation that employs
Right.
thousands of people and a really small business that might employ 10 people.
Yeah. And they really did the new standards were done with, you can tell it was done with a lot of love. They really put a lot of thought. Like the new standards documents, literally 1,130 pages long. I'm still not all the way through it myself. And it's been called dissertation level work. Um, so, but they really did put in like, what is the intent of this question, right? They put in, here are the definitions of the words we're using, like so that everybody's on the same page, right? Because the bar's been raised. There's lots of new things in there that B Corps haven't done before, so maybe they don't know the terminology. Maybe that they put in links to different calculators to use to be able to get the answers and what types of documentation would be valid, because now B Corp is going to have you upload documentation for every single question, very similar to EcoVadis. So, yeah.
Wow. Well, that kind of leads me to my next question, which we are in an interesting political climate right now, I'll just say. One where ESG and DEI efforts are facing growing criticism. And so, with that in mind, have you encountered any resistance to continuing this work? And if you have, how are you responding to it?
Yeah, yeah. It is hard out there for an ESG DEI girly right now. There's been some resistance, there's been some hesitation. We've had clients talk about, hey, we want to we're in the middle of doing an impact report, but we want to put it out, but we think that we might get in trouble or turned off or lose clientele if we call it an impact or sustainability report. Like we don't want to put a target on ourselves, and it's like, okay, well, let's pull in more financial data and make it a annual business report, right? Like let's change up what we're calling things. A lot of clients are coming to us saying, hey, we still really want to do the work, but in order for us to get it signed off on, we can't call it, what we're calling it. It's like, I don't care if we call it, a purple polka dotted elephant. Like, we'll call the work whatever you want to call it. If we can just get it signed and get to work, because that's what's important. Um, as I said before, like ESG risk, which is what a lot of this work does, is it addresses your ESG risk, right? Things like your attrition rate, your employee satisfaction,
Mhm.
your employee engagement to, okay. I have a case study that'll help illustrate a really great like point here. So we had a winery client and we did a basic greenhouse gas inventory for them and looked at where their emissions were. And we found, as with most wineries, most of their emissions are coming from their actual shipping of the cases of wine, right?
Okay.
So we suggested something that's a little scandalous for the wine world is would you say to lightweighting your wine bottles by 5%? So there's this big myth in the wine industry that the heavier the bottle, the better the wine. It is just a myth. I've had some great lightweight bottles. But so we said, just 5%, take the glass out of the bottom of the bottle, like let's lightweight the bottles, and then the cases will weigh less. So the shipping, your cost for shipping will be less, your emissions for shipping will be less, right? And so they saved, and granted, they were scandalized by the suggestion as well. And they, said, well, we can't do this, our customers will notice. And it's like this.
Percent.
Um, they're just going to notice that the wine's going to taste the same. They'll be fine. Um, they said, okay, well, we'll do it for two brands. And they did it for two brands and started to notice some interesting things. So They noticed not only one, they were saving money. So in the first year they implemented this, they saved $1 million in revenue. They saved, right? So bottom line, boom, saved $1 million. Top line growth. So who did notice that the cases were the people who were stocking the shelves at the stores. So if you went into, a wine spirit store, um, the folks were saying, if I have to build a big display with a bunch of wine, I'm going to use the cases at way less. And so those big, beautiful displays that you're seeing in the front of the stores, their product was getting used for it more and more because the cases didn't weigh as much. And so they started to sell more product because they were getting prime placement. So that is one of those, they saved a ton of money on the bottom line. They grew, what was it, 26, 27 million on the bottom line? Like they grew, like it was amazing. So, but they would have never have thought about those things if they hadn't done a greenhouse gas emissions inventory.
Hmm.
Right. And so it has you look at different things in your business to be able to pull different, levers to really be able to be more efficient, to be more cost effective. Right. So if you're doing, DEI work, and doing, employee satisfaction engagement surveys and learning more for your employees and holding listening sessions to learn about, where the rubs are for your employees, and then you actually do some improvements on that, your attrition rate goes down. And business owners know that it's a huge cost to have to rehire an employee. So if an employee leaves or you're firing somebody, it's on average, like, what is it, like a third or two-thirds of their salary
Yeah,
to
somewhere
replace that individual?
between
Like it's really high,
Mhm.
right? And we're talking, what, $50,000 per employee, just to and so actually retaining your talent and helping your employees stay there and be happy, your attrition rate cost goes down, right? Your employees are happier, so they're being more productive. They're treating clients and customers better, so the customers and clients are happier, so they're bringing more work in, right? It's the cycle of, it just makes business sense. That's why you've seen organizations like Costco come out and say, we're not getting rid of our DEI programs because it makes business sense, right?
Mhm.
And while you've seen Walmart and Target roll back their DEI stuff, they're still asking their customers for their GHG carbon emissions data on their surveys because that makes business sense for them. So there's lots of different things. Like it makes business sense in many, many ways. And soon it's going to be regulatory mandatory reporting. So um, that's a whole nother thing we could dig into, but
Well,
yeah.
I I also love that because what the pushback that you hear often is the idea that making these changes to worry about the environment or things that seem outside of the core business are expensive or it's too hard to implement or it's too expensive to implement. But this is really like a win-win-win-win sort of scenario here where you're like, yes, we're doing good things to make sure that the water we drink and the air we breathe and the planet we live on is not sick.
Mm-hmm.
And but yet we're also making more money, having happier customers and employees. And so it's pretty amazing to me the far-reaching and impact that this can have on a business in such a positive way.
Yeah. I mean, another great example is, a lot of accounting firms have gone paperless in the last few years. And, think about how much, accounting firms have saved on just buying paper, buying toner, um, how many printers that you've leased in your space. We used to have 4 or 5 different printers in one office. Now we just have one for the entire office, right? And the maintenance of that printer. The rooms and rooms of file cabinets that we used to have to store all of our, and then the offsite storage because you got to save records for 7 years, right? So, it's all of that paper has gone away, all those storage fees, all of the buying the paper in the middle of folders and all the accoutrements and the filing cabinets. And so it's like we're saving money, but also saving the planet. And
Yeah.
it's less crazy making. Like employees can sit at their desks and find a file in 2 seconds when they used to have to like go down to the file room, dig through the files, right? It's
Yeah.
more efficient.
Oh, yes.
So yeah. Or we can work from home because we have access to all the files at home, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah.
So, for any other accounting firms that are thinking about doing this, what should they know up front and how do they prepare?
Yeah. So there is one sticky point for accounting firms that you need to look at. Or there's many, but there's a few.
One big one.
But the big one right now is controversial industries. So B Lab has this requirement that certified B Corps should not be working in or working with controversial industries. And they have their list of industries, things like pharmaceutical companies, firearm makers, weapons makers, pornography, tobacco, like some of the stuff that you would look at the list and go, oh yeah, no, I understand why that's on that list. Um, and they have out of that list, and so you have to look at what are your clients? Who are you serving? Right? Do you have anybody that's fossil fuels? Right? And there's a smaller kind of 5, 6 different industries that are like the no, you need to have less than 1% of revenue in these different industries. And if you do have clients. And so if you have that, then there's like this whole pathway to certification, a couple extra hoops you have to jump through.
Hmm.
So for example, we have two fossil fuel clients, right? In the as percentage of revenue, it's way less than 1% of our total revenue, right? And honestly, one of them we would totally go to bat for because they're trying to do really innovative stuff in the fossil fuel industry, like cleaning up the actual blends, and they're amazing, amazing organization. So we would go to bat for them because they're sustainable, right? They're trying to be sustainable and change up their industry. So, but there's different pathways for professional service firms that are serving clients in these different industries. And, you have to have a really robust whistleblower policy. You have to have a really robust grievance policy. And you have to post it publicly, and so that anybody who has a grievance against your organization can come in and they know the exact process of filing a grievance with your company, who's going to look after it, right? That sort of thing. So they're trying to hold companies accountable for working in these industries. So I've had firms approach me and say, hey, we want to become B Corp certified. And I went, you guys have way too many government contractors, to you have way too much no companies in your client base. And so we kind of say, okay, we can, but there's other frameworks, there's other things that we can work on. But B Corp certification maybe not for you. So it's that is the big one, is the controversial industries, um and who you work with,
Okay.
because that really says a lot about your firm, who you're willing to work with
Yeah.
at the end of the day. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure that we could talk about this forever. Certainly more time than we have today. But I want to close with a couple of just fun questions.
Yeah.
So, when you were, I don't know, 5 years old, just starting school, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Goodness. So, back then, grandma's daycare. So my parents went to work, stayed with grandma, and so after school would go stay with grandma, and she loved Avon, and would get all sorts of like Avon products. And one day she got this necklace, and it was a gold medallion replica of King Tut's mask.
Uh,
And I became just super, I fell in love with it, wanted to know what it was. And so when I was little, I wanted to become an Egyptologist. And so I was obsessed with all things Egyptian. And I mean, if I turned off my blur, you would see I still have some like Egyptian statues and stuff in my home. Like and it all started with that little Avon necklace.
Okay, I've never gotten that as an answer to that question. So I love it. And I'm assuming you've been to Egypt.
I have not. That is big on my bucket list. So as soon as I can find a way to go there safely, I will.
Well, that kind of is my second question. If you're given the chance to travel anywhere for free, don't have to worry about time off and all those kind of things, where would you go and why?
Yeah, no, Egypt. I would hop on a plane, go to Egypt, and do all the pyramids and temples and see all the things. And yeah,
Oh, that sounds,
that would definitely be one of my first things.
I hope you get to do that. And finally, if you could have one superpower, what would it be?
Teleportation. If I could, like, you wake up and you just want a really good croissant in the morning. If I could just teleport to like France and get a croissant and a little espresso, and then come back to my desk and do some work, and then go have dinner at, like, I don't know, Amsterdam, like,
Mhm.
just teleport anywhere in the world, you know, as like instantly as I want. That would be awesome.
I that one actually is probably our most common superpower that we get here. And I find it especially true for people that live in urban areas, like you and I both do, because you could also avoid traffic if you could teleport.
It would lower my carbon footprint as a human being,
There you go, right?
you know?
Es-
No more travel.
I like it. I like it a lot. Well, thank you so much for being here today. Real quick, if anybody wants to learn more about B Corp certification or just reach out to you with any questions, how would they do that?
Absolutely. Y'all can find me on LinkedIn. I'm easy to find. Or email me at jharrity@sensiba.com, or just go to sensiba.com, and you can find me through the website.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This has been really interesting, and I feel like I've learned a lot, and hopefully everybody else has too. So it's great seeing you, Jen.
Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for listening to Move Like This, brought to you by the Accounting Move Project and sponsored by Moss Adams, the Center for Accounting Transformation and CPA Trendlines. If you'd like to learn more, visit our website at accountingmoveproject.com. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your friends and colleagues too. I'm your host, Bonnie Buol Ruszczyk, and until next time, keep moving forward.